The RMS Titanic is a ship that has fascinated the world for over 100 years. In a few days, we will be approaching her 101st anniversary. A story that was once clearly understood and known has become murky in the last 7 years. In 2006, 2 of her hull pieces were discovered. What does that mean? We'll talk about it later. You're watching How She Sank on YouTube. I'm your host, Neil Roberts. What you see here in this picture of the Titanic is a 45-degree list, right before the keel supposedly broke right here, splitting the ship between the third and fourth funnel. That has been the story that has been understood since the vessel sank. Actually, it's not. You see, for those of you who haven't paid attention to the Titanic story, the 45-degree angle and split between the third and fourth funnel is actually relatively new. When the ship was discovered in 1986, her stern half and her bow half were 2.5 miles apart. That contradicted everything that had officially been told, the official story, by both the British and American inquiries. The original story was that the Titanic went down at a shallow angle and intact in one piece. But when you find the bow and the stern 2.5 miles apart, that clearly indicates that the ship broke at or near the surface. And for the keel to break, everyone thought the steel, at the time, modern ship, the wrought iron modern ship, had to reach a high angle for the iron to fail. You get the 45, as a result, you have the 45-degree angle with the split. Now, as I said a little earlier, we were talking about how the 45-degree angle is not right. And one of the reasons we know it is not right is from survivor testimony. Those who are in the lifeboat say that the Titanic went down in one solid piece to the bottom. Those who were on the ship said she broke. It led to a controversy that the Board of Inquiries in Britain and America both decided without even really testing anything. They said the ship went down as a whole because it was one of the most well-engineered vessels of its time. We know that's not true because the ship split. But then we come up with this 45-degree angle, and you sit there and you wonder, well, I think the survivors would have noticed the ship rising that high and splitting. There would be no controversy. In 2006, 2 pieces of the Titanic's hull were discovered. The hull pieces were later identified because there's some chalk that was still friggin' visible 100 years later as underneath 2 pieces that were attached together and underneath the third and fourth funnel, right about here. These pieces are about 2.5 miles east of the actual wreckage of the stern. What they indicate is that the Titanic broke at a shallower angle and actually was together a lot longer than we initially anticipated. Because if those pieces were together, since those pieces are so close, they had to be together when they fell towards the ocean floor, which means that the split had to happen at a lower angle. And another thing that people started to look at and go, well, this is odd, is that when you look at the hull, most of the damage seems to be occurred along the top levels of the stern and bow pieces, while it looks like a nice clean cut on the bottom. Now what this indicates, as you can see here, is the break actually started at a shallower angle and up on the top, not the bottom of the ship. And when the break started, along an expansion joint as well, the aft expansion joint. And you can see a nice little narrow white gap here. Zoom in. So the expansion joint starts to split, and as a result of that joint splitting, water starts spilling into the 2 watertight compartments around the joint. Now, as a result of the water spilling into these compartments, it forced a whiplash effect on the ship, pulling those 2 compartments lower into the water and forcing the bow and stern to close on each other, which causes the stern to rapidly rise high out of the water. That final scene where the stern finally plunges. And as a result, the upper decks compress, and that's where you get a lot of the damage on the upper decks on the bow and the stern. That compressed look when you look at the pictures at the bottom of the hull. Now, eventually, the buoyancy in the stern was too much for the now rapidly flooding bow and middle section of the ship, and it folded, completely separating the two hull plates that were found later in 2006, causing the ship to break apart and these hull pieces, which are right here, to fall away.